While working as a full-time instructor at JMA, Mr. Nakamura had the opportunity to meet some of the world's leading business leaders and their stakeholders. What he learned from these encounters was that they brought with them a huge amount of content from a variety of fields. In this book, he has compiled content that will help improve business management from the perspective of learn first-class work techniques from sports. Here, I would like to introduce some of that content. The contents introduced in this Kindle book include 14 topics, from health management to mental training. This time, we will only introduce a part of them. First, Mr. Nakamura's obesity led to high blood pressure, and how he regained his health by scientifically calculating calories, and how he started kendo are introduced in detail. These measures are essential for important individuals as professionals to work in a company, but they were also common measures that formed the basis of the activities of the athletes we will introduce below. In athletics, there is the 100-meter sprint, as shown in the figure. The limit that was once thought to be the limit of humankind, called the 10-second barrier, has already been broken and become common knowledge. The countermeasure was to use a scientific approach, dividing the 100-meter sprint into 4 zones and applying the world's best countermeasures to each zone. This is exactly the IE method used in industry. Sports and industry are different subjects. However, from the perspective of usage, when looking at the problem-solving perspective gained from the analysis of sports, there was still a lot of useful content that should be brought into the industrial field, and this book introduces examples of this. In 1975, a group of women led by Tobii became the first to successfully reach the summit of the 848 MMT Everest. This is a summary of a lecture she gave at a company after the summit, in which she talked about her motivation for setting goals for herself in this one and only life, and her encounter with mountain climbing. Mrs. Tobii told her to have your own Everest, which is comparable to the activities of industrial workers who have precise goals and aspirations. Mrs. Tobii has put together this diagram of the process he used to recruit members to climb Everest. There are many people who climb mountains, but when he invited them to take on a challenge that no one has ever taken before, such as climbing Everest, only a few people actually participated, and they responded with, "I want to go, but..." Although the context is different, this situation is similar to the launch of a venture company or the challenge of a new project within a company. Furthermore, the people who joined this group were mountain climbers as a hobby, and were not in any position to make a lot of money from reaching the summit. They had staked their lifelong dreams on mountain climbing. For a group of women to summit Everest in a world first, it took more than enough preparation. As shown in the diagram, this reform involved a deadline and limited funding, but everyone pooled their wisdom, cooperated, and conducted an incredibly thorough preparatory process. Even if the target is different, there are many things we can learn from this initiative and its contents. During the Everest climb, Mrs. Tobii was hit by an avalanche. However, she was lucky enough to escape this unexpected accident, and after checking her physical condition, she reached the summit. This kind of climb is a chance for everyone, but who will ultimately take on the role of summiting? Such issues are introduced in detail. From this content, we can learn about the activities of this kind of climbing team. Next, I will introduce the efforts made by Mr. Shuobu Murafushi, the father of Mr. Kahoji Murafushi, in the hammer throw from the sections in this book. The reason I chose this sport is that, if we think about it in common sense, it is an environment that goes beyond common sense for humans to take up the sport, even for those who are blessed with physical strength. However, there are many things that the industrial world can learn from the efforts made by Mr. Murafushi to improve his records one after another through scientific analysis. In sports, effort is essential to improve your records and skills. It is necessary to take measures scientifically and in a way that is optimal for you. To address this issue, Mr. Murafushi set goals with his rival, and using an 8mm film projector, which was new technology at the time, he thoroughly compared his throwing style with his rivals, and considered the problem and the solution. Today, this scientific and objective evaluation method, which has become commonplace in all sports, was surely useful in improving his record. This analysis method is the same method that is often seen in manufacturing innovation, and is one aspect that industrialists should take into consideration. Mr. Shuobu Murafushi's son, Mr. Kohoji Murafushi, won a gold medal at the Athens Olympics in 2004. As shown in the figure, he is known for further improving his father's scientific physical analysis, and in the book shown in the figure, he has published the content of that analysis and even more advanced scientific analysis. The author, Mr. Nakamura, practices kendo as a hobby. He is currently 82 years old, has a 7th dan, and continues to practice with his friends. Kendo is one of the martial arts that is based on Japanese culture and is effective for human development and health management. Its distinctive feature is that it is a sport that can be played by people of all ages and genders, regardless of age or weight, since the equipment is used. At the same time, as it is a part of the historical Japanese culture, the scientific analysis of the sport that has been explained so far can be useful for elderly people to improve their skills, so that they can compete against younger opponents while experiencing the efforts of their predecessors. Many useful perspectives from our predecessors remain in the culture of kendo. This diagram and example is an anecdote about arranging flowers in a vase. Around 1600, there was a master swordsman called Miyamoto Musashi. He was famous for never losing in 60 serious fights and for leaving behind a book called 5 Rings. To become even more famous, he visited the residence of a master swordsman called Yagyu Sekishusai to have a match with him. While waiting in his room, he noticed this vase and flowers. He removed the flowers from the vase and looked at the cut. He realized that the person who cut the flowers was Sekishusai and that he was a master swordsman, so he left without fighting. In this way, a master swordsman was able to see the results and distinguish the technique, and realized that if he fought such a swordsman, they would only end up inflicting injuries on each other by the useless battle, and thus avoided the danger. This is one of the teachings of kendo, which means the state of tang. As with anything, some people mistakenly believe that, when a person becomes famous in a certain field, he or she is the best in that field, and therefore the best person in all humankind. When this happens, there are cases where the person completely ignores the opinions and advice of others, and ends up in a state similar to that of the emperor with no new clothes. This content is a warning that explains this state. Sumo is Japan's national sport, but recently there have been many overseas wrestlers doing well in the top ranks. A distinctive feature of sumo is that wrestlers enter a company-like organization called a sumo stable as an exclusive organization, are trained, and aim to become a yokozuna. Because of this, although the basic techniques are the same, the way each wrestler works and the training methods are like the know-how of each stable and were rarely made public. In Japanese sumo, as shown in this figure, yokozuna is the highest rank. Also, the ranking of sumo wrestlers is displayed in order of winning percentage, and the ranking of each wrestler is shown in this table. At the same time, the income earned by this ranking varies greatly. For this reason, even within the same stable, wrestlers compete fiercely with each other to improve their skills and make efforts to improve their own abilities. In the environment described above, when wrestlers join a stable at a young age, they work 24 hours a day to improve their skills in sumo alone. However, because sumo is not a sport divided by weight, there are many differences in physical strength between wrestlers. Also, because wrestlers fight by clashing bodies almost naked, injuries are common. For this reason, many wrestlers become mentally distressed or quit, so a coach called a oyakata as a president of a sumo stable is needed, who act as a group like parents and provide coaching suited to each wrestler. This diagram shows how a oyakata explains this situation. Through this process, even small wrestlers can be raised to defeat those with larger physiques and heavier bodies, and this situation has become a source of interest to sumo audiences. So far, I have given examples of perspectives and key points that should be utilized in companies for the 3 subjects marked in red on this diagram, regardless of whether they are professional or amateur. The book also covers team sports such as baseball and rugby, and there are many points to learn from them in terms of corporate management and human resource development. This is because the speakers spoke from perspectives that are useful to companies and factories. I recommend that anyone who is interested in the various contents read this book. Thank you very much for watching the introduction to this Kindle book. The above explanation is the gist of this picture book. You can also get it at this URL. Amazon Prime members can watch it for free.